Welcome to the presentation by the Animal Protection League of New Jersey's Sue Russell on the North Atlantic right whale and the outrage of U.S. policy. Sue Russell is the Wildlife Policy Director for the Animal Protection League. She is the former Vice President of Friends of Animals, the National Animal Protection Organization. She was the campaign head for New Jersey laws that banned the steel-jawed leg hold trap and banned the sale and possession of wild-caught birds for the pet trade. The Star-Ledger published her op-ed about protecting North Atlantic right whales, and when the Star-Ledger published their own editorial on the issue, they wrote, Sue Russell, Policy Director for the Animal Protection League, is absolutely right when she reminds us that the NOAA is still a branch of the U.S. Department of Commerce and that it fails to reduce whale deaths because it capitulates to the fishing lobby. Welcome, Sue.
Thank you, Doris. It's really good to be here. Today we're going to be talking about something we shouldn't have to talk about, and that's the approaching extinction of the North Atlantic right whale. Some of the issues we're going to touch on are the status of the North Atlantic right whale. There are about 360 whales left, about fewer than 70 breeding females. Threats to the right whale, vessel strikes and fishing gear entanglement, recent right whale updates, which is a very macabre list of the fatalities and sublethal injuries that these whales have been suffering are on our Atlantic coast. And then opposition, believe it or not, that blocks protective rules, life-saving protective rules, and the political situation and what we must do. First off, I think most of us know that the right whale is in what they call an extinction crisis. They were heavily hunted for whale fat, and then went right in, they never recovered, and then went right into having way too many vessel strikes and entanglements in fishing gear. The human impacts continue to threaten this species. The deaths outweigh the births, and the number of new calves born in recent years has been below average. They call this unusual mortality, and it's about 20% of this depleted population, which is very significant. And 1/3 of the right whale deaths aren't even only 1/3 are documented. Here's a chart that shows us graphically what's been happening to this gentle giant. Only 1/3 of right whale deaths are documented, as we've said. Over on the right, you can see the toll, the dead, vessel strikes, unknown causes, entanglement, serious injuries, and sublethal injuries should not be discounted, because more than not, they ultimately end up killing the whale by various means, just crippling them or unable to eat. Any number of problems arise. It's not a one-off when a whale is hit or entangled. It can be a long death. Here is a in motion chart done by NOAA. In the far left, you can see this little red guy trying to migrate up the coast back to New England and Canada. And the blue darts are ships and tankers and smaller vessels. I compare this to a human trying to cross the Jersey Turnpike at rush hour. For these whales and for the mother and calf, there is no quiet lane ever, because a lot of these larger vessels and the tankers operate all night. And a lot of the smaller fishing vessels, the charter captains advertise, especially in the Southeast, going out at night, like all night shark fishing expeditions, which may explain why so many of these whales are hit, in particular in the Southeast. The whales migrate from Canada and New England down to the Southeast states. So this is what they're facing, and this is why we need people to slow down to 10 knots per hour in certain high-risk areas. As I've said, this explains how the right whales travel, and it shows you the travel route. North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and northern Florida, where the whales, the mothers, give birth and nurse their young. Interestingly, it's legislators from those states who are trying to block the vessel strike rule. These are some instances, recent incidents of whales being hit. This is an entanglement issue. You can see over on the right-hand side, the rope attached to this whale. This is dead right whale, April 4, 2024. On the right-hand side, what you're looking at is the vertebra from the whale's lower back. It was fractured right down the middle. Imagine how that felt. And it was blunt force trauma from what they call a vessel or a boat. This is another whale, April 2, 2024. It was a mother from the 2024 calving season. Her calf was also considered seriously injured. The mother and the calves travel so closely together, so close to the surface and in toward the shore, that these accidents are happening, and that's why we're asking everybody to slow down. Here's a dead juvenile right whale, blunt force trauma, fractures of the skull. Right whales are difficult. It's difficult to see their faces. They have a very long mouth, big head, and the eyes are set way back. And they are very, very gentle. This is an incident of a lobster pot or trap rope, very clearly in the right-hand photo. And that's germane because the lobster industry lobbyists and Susan Collins say that they never, ever entangle whales. And here we are. NOAA says, including the purple markings on the rope recovered in North Atlantic, NOAA concluded that the rope is consistent with the rope used in Maine state water trap pot buoy lines. This is Juno's calf. It's particularly heartbreaking, and we want to warn you, it's pretty graphic. But this just shows you how long it takes and what happens. This is an injured North Atlantic right whale calf, seen with injuries on the head, mouth, and left lip. And this is January 10, 2024. The next one is January 26, 2024. Still, the calf has severe injuries, head, mouth, and left lip, consistent with a vessel strike. Shows sign of healing, and then contradictory, the wounds are covered with a large number of whale lice, indicative of health decline. I really don't see how you have signs of healing here, but the next is February 9, 2024. Apparent successful nursing long-term prognosis is still poor. This is particularly sad that in that condition, both the mother and the calf tried to nurse. February 26, 2024. The calf is seen bleeding from the previously documented vessel strike wounds. That was it. The mother, Juno, was seen off St. Augustine on March 2nd, 2024. And there's the baby. The carcass was scavenged by sharks. That was March 4, 2024. At this point, this is what was left of it. protecting endangered whales isn't easy. In the United States in 2022 and in 2024. In 2022, Susan Collins and Chuck Schumer, standing behind her, inserted language in the 2023 fiscal year budget that actually prevented NOAA from issuing a more protective entanglement rule mandated by the federal courts, which said NOAA was not doing enough regulating fishing gear. The ideal would be some kind of ropeless gear, because the whales get entangled in the vertical lines that go from the surface down to the seabed. And Susan Collins went in and inserted language in the budget. Actually, Chuck Schumer put it in for her, that prevented NOAA from doing that until 2028. So the US Congress denied the North Atlantic right whale in an extinction crisis protection for 6 years for a whale that will be functionally extinct in 2028. In 2035, I'm sorry. This explains what she did with the bill. At the same time, Congress did that. They denied the entanglement protection. Scientists warned that the current US and Canadian policies allow at least 5 times the rate of entanglement the right whale can withstand. And Chuck Schumer got the nickname Extinction Democrat for his work in doing that. The other issue is vessel strikes, and environmental groups oppose harmful right whale vessel strike bills. Believe it or not, senators and congressmen have bills in Congress having tied up the entanglement rule until 2028. They now want to tie up the vessel strike rule, which NOAA dragged its feet for many, many years, finally came out with the proposed rule in July of 2022. And the Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation, which represents Bass Pro and Shimano, brags in its newsletters that it is holding up that proposed regulation in behalf of the sport fishing industry. And we wouldn't want to inconvenience sport fishermen for, I think it's 15 days if there's an overlap. When we go to the regulations, we'll explain that. So that's kind of what's going on there. This is a North Atlantic right whale, Infinity and her calf were struck off the coast of Florida in February 2021. The calf died from the strike, and the mother also had injuries. Getting a handle on speed and enforcement is non-negotiable. Oceana, which does a lot of work with fisheries, studied how compliance went with both mandatory and voluntary speed limits. 90% of vessels exceed speed limits that are in place to protect the whales. And they also found that reduced speed may cut fatalities by 80 to 90%. The faster the vessel is going, the greater the injury, which is common sense. And part of the fight now is that what NOAA is trying to do with its proposed regulation is extend the existing speed limit, which is voluntary in a lot of places, in certain areas to 10 knots per hour. So to boats 35 feet and above. And it says in recent years, 8 boats between 35 and 65 feet have reported accidents striking North Atlantic right whales. 6 large whale strikes may have involved the North Atlantic right whale. In one particular case, because this is again being denied, these boats are too small. No, small boats create big problems. In 2021, a sport fishing boat moving at 21 knots sliced into a young calf's body. The one we just saw had fresh propeller cuts. That boat was destroyed, by the way. Natural Resources Defense Council points out that 3 of the 4 known vessel strike events that involve mothers and calves since 2020 involve vessels 35 and 65 feet in length. So NOAA doesn't propose, it's a slow-moving agency, and it doesn't propose anything for nothing. We need to get this regulation through. It was a $1.2 million, 54-foot long fishing boat. Here it is. Here are the current NOAA regulations, 10 knots or lower for vessels 65 feet or larger in designated high-risk zones and speed restriction areas at certain times of the year. The agency's new proposal, the pending vessel strike amendment, would modify the boundaries of the current speed restriction, known as the seasonable management areas, and then include most vessels greater than or equal to 35 feet and less than 65 feet in length, and create a dynamic speed zone to implement mandatory speed restrictions, because you need that dynamism, because with the climate change, the food is moving and the whales are moving. So you can't predict with any accuracy, 100% accuracy, where these whales are going to need protection. So this allows NOAA to accommodate for that. That's about that. And this is the simplicity of what's needed. The offshore fishing lobby is co-opting the rule, has so far, and in a very cynical way, they're trying to substitute long-term research in technology for recognizing whales and alerting and all that for the immediate protection in the closing days of an emergency extinction crisis. They're saying don't bother with the rules that may inconvenience the relatively few winter off-season boaters and charter captains. After years of inexcusable delay, hold off until the non-existent technology is fully deployed. For a whale on life support, that's a death sentence, and they know it. This technology is nowhere near ready. And that is saving grace. It doesn't look so hot for anyone, even them, to be the Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation, to be arguing against a whale that is headed for extinction. So they're saying, oh, we're not doing that. No. We're taking 82 million in public money, and we support this research. That's what we support. And that's baloney. And they know. Offshore sport fishing claims unfounded. Part of the argument is that it's going to impact boat sales, and that's nonsense. It's like saying school safety zones limit automobile sales or any other commerce. The inference is ridiculous. NOAA says the claims are false. Because of their seasonal nature, the regulations will not significantly impact recreationalists. And you can see from the calendar how that's true, because the vessel strike rule applies from mid-November to mid-April. The impact on off-season offshore fishing is marginal. South Carolina charters advertise an active season from mid-March to October. The Northeast is kind of like that. At most, you have an overlap of 15 days in certain areas. The political situation is that there is a bill in the House of Representatives, HR 1213, to repeal Congress's ban on new NOAA rules on entanglement. And we have New Jersey representatives, Frank Pallone, Donald Payne, Andy Kim, and Bonnie Watson-Coleman are co-sponsors. Problem is, it's not going anywhere. House Republicans won't move the bill. In the Senate, New Jersey and Connecticut Senators Cory Booker and Richard Blumenthal are pushing back. But if they don't get support, we're going to lose this whale. Part of my fear is that NOAA just announced with a great deal of fanfare, supported by the same fishing industry that's been holding back the regulation, that they're now going to, at this very late date, at the 11th hour, they're going to use 82 million to develop equipment and to enforce and to blah, 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 blah. And the way it was heralded by the Sportsmen's Federation, which represents Shimano and Bass Pro, made one think that maybe this was a quid pro quo, that we're not, once again, we're not going to give the whale the rule it needs to survive. We're going to take this money and say that we're looking into it. You know, we're going to look into technology as a way to save it and not pass this rule. So in 2024, the Senate leader, Chuck Schumer, must not only refuse to once again abet the anti-whale measures, but leverage his and the president's power to obtain immediate implementation of the vessel strike and entanglement rules. And the latter entails repealing the Collins Amendment. In 1973, a very different Congress enacted the Endangered Species Act to halt and reverse the trend toward species extinction, whatever the cost. We can clearly see that this present Congress doesn't believe that and doesn't act on it. They're using the budget to counteract it. The right whale has suffered enough at the hands of humans, and the craven withholding of protection from this ancient persecuted whale is a moral catastrophe. This is a crisis, and what we can all do, what we have been doing, is, but this is kind of new, is urge the New Jersey delegation to pressure President Biden, Joe Biden, to post haste remove all obstacles to immediate approval and enforcement of vessel strike and entanglement regulations. The Biden administration has twice denied environmental group petitions to, at the very least, allow emergency rules to protect mothers and calves during the calving season. Doesn't seem unreasonable, but even then, the sporting lobby prevailed. And President Biden's administration twice denied it. I know that with the collapse of the Key Bridge, there was another plea with the rerouting and crowding of more and more tankers and boats to increase enforcement. What you get is silence, because in fairness, NOAA scientists are the ones at these hearings saying this is a crisis. The marine biologists are the ones saying there is going to be a functional extinction in 2035. They're working for this, and NOAA is under the Department of Commerce, which cares about business and is listening to, whether it's the lobsterman lobby, which is very powerful, it sounds quaint, but it's very powerful, or whomever, you know, the boat manufacturers. So we're asking people to click on the link in the chat, and we have a prepared letter that you can send, and maybe even pick up the phone and telephone President Biden yourself. This is a tough fight. You know, the Monterey Bay Aquarium had declared that lobsters, don't buy lobsters because of what the lobster traps and pots were doing to the North Atlantic right whale. And the quaint Maine fishermen tried to sue them, promised to sue them. You had the Maine delegation doing all sorts of machinations in Congress to stop any entanglement regulation. So there are powerful forces in the United States that are not protecting this whale, and this is just happening right before our eyes. And this is not just simply endangered. It is in crisis. It may already be too late. I don't know. A speaker from NRDC gave a talk months and months ago, and basically with all the new seabed industries, it's going to be pretty difficult for marine mammals, a range of marine mammals to survive. And when you look at that map and you see that yearling whale trying to make his way up, it doesn't look very hopeful, but I think we need to fight for this whale, and everyone needs to do what they can. And I thank you very much for listening to this, and I hope you spread the message that something has to be done. It's been lovely talking to you, and I look forward to answering your questions. Thank you.